Okay, family, it's time for me to go.
Why?
I will send for you once I'm established in Seattle.
Okay. Ah, jeez. Baby, there's snow in the suitcases again. Done with Canadian winters. I know I'm leaving, but if you ever miss me, just go to youtube.com/DPReview. Bye.
Hey guys.
Hey guys, we're on our way.
Yeah, we're really excited to get there. We're just wondering, when we land in the airport in Seattle, who's going to pick us up again?
We actually don't need you to move here. You staying in Canada was really part of the appeal of this whole arrangement. This is pretty uncomfortable.
Okay.
I'm gonna go now.
Thanks, guys. No problem.
Thanks. And this is an easy mistake.
An easy mistake, yeah. I don't want to name names or anything, Jordan, but you really this up. Hey, it's Chris Nichols here, and we're excited because we've got a brand new show for DPReview. DPReview, which is awesome because, you know, when you think about camera reviews, you really think about DPReview.com. And so we're super excited to do this. You know, this gives us a chance to still keep what's great about our show, about what Jordan and I love to do, but add on DPReview's lab tests, support from the team, and so much more. So we think this will be an awesome show for you guys. Now, for our first episode for DPReview, we want to look at the Sony a7 III because this camera has now hit markets, it's in people's hands, it's proving wildly popular, and we now have an opportunity to really look at high-end tests, really breaking down the image quality and the capabilities of this new camera. But before we get started in the review, just bear with me, I want to talk about something briefly here. Now, in our past show, we worked really hard to build up a reputation for being honest and giving unbiased reviews, even though we were attached to a retailer. And what's so great about working for DPReview now is we're part of an editorial branch. So you can expect that we're still going to be as unbiased as ever. We're going to give you our honest opinions on all the camera gear. And as we've always done in the past, we're going to fully disclose any sort of support we get from the manufacturers in terms of things like press trips and stuff like that. But really, you know, this is an amazing partnership for us, and it really lets us make the show that we've always wanted to make. So with that being said, we hope you enjoy, and let's get to the review. So we brought you out here to Camera, Alberta to show you the majesty of the Canadian Rockies, but we've just had the worst winter ever. And as you can see, everything still looks dead and lifeless, but much like our show, Canada will get better, so just stay tuned. Now, in terms of just handling and body design, I mean, this is my favorite Sony camera to date, but to be honest, it's nothing new. I mean, the a7 III is really borrowing a lot from other cameras in this series, like the a7R III and the a9. But there are some standout things that I do want to talk about in terms of handling. Now, first off, the mode dial on top, I love that they got rid of the locking piece. I really didn't like that. You know, this dial's not in a position where you're going to hit it easily, and that locking piece was just another way to slow you down. Now, as far as the touchscreen goes, too, I had an interesting talk with Kerry Rose at DPReview. He was saying it's quite laggy, and if you compare it to the competition, other cameras on the market, it is. But I was thinking, well, it's not really that much slower, but I'm just comparing it to other Sonys. It's pretty slow, and it's kind of annoying that you can't use it for the function tiles and things like that, but at least you can bring it up to your eye and you can use it to move your autofocusing point, and it does work pretty well in that regard. What I do love, though, is we have a joystick on the back for autofocus. I mean, it's very useful. It's a great feature from the a9. And if you look at a lot of other cameras that are competing against the a7 III, like the Nikon D750 or Canon 6D Mark II, you'll notice a distinct lack of focusing joystick on those cameras. So, you know, one of the key things about Sony cameras is you got to get them set up the way you like. And I know a lot of people, they talk about how bad the menus are and how many pages there are. And yes, granted, there are a lot of options that you have to set. But when you get a Sony camera, you have to just go through, customize it the way you like it. Get my menu set up on the a7 III, get the tiles that you're going to use on a regular basis in the function menu. And you know, I like to do things like set eye autofocus as a custom button, go to back button focusing. I also a really big fan of auto ISO, so I'm going to go there, set my minimum shutter speed, and get my ISO into auto. But I guess really the takeaway is they're not that bad. Take some time, get it customized the way you like, and then you're never going to have to wade through menus again. So I'm trying to get this awkward shot. I mean, no one's going to use this camera for vlogging, but I would still like a fully articulating screen. I'll have to make do with this one. So this out here, I'm not even going to show you because it'd be really pretty if the light was right, but it's just not. So I'm going to talk about the battery life on this camera instead. And it's worth talking about because honestly, the new Z battery is the biggest improvement on these Alpha cameras. I mean, all the new ones have it. It makes a huge difference and really gets past a major weakness on the part of the Sony cameras before it. Now, the Z-type battery is going to give you a CPR rating of 710 shots. I'd say that's conservative. We've been shooting with this a lot, and it just goes and goes and goes. And in fact, the A7 III gives the best battery life out of the new cameras that use this type of battery. But there is a downside to why that's possible. And, you know, in order to keep the cost of the camera down, we do have a scaled down LCD and EVF. And, you know, when it comes to the EVF, it's 2.36 million dots. It's basically the same EVF you would have in the A7R II. But the optics inside magnified a little bit more, and that sounds like an advantage, but the fact is that it actually accentuates a little bit of the softness that you're getting on this old EVF. Now, for stills, I'm not finding it that bad. I mean, it's still a pretty decent EVF, but I know for video work, there might be some issues there. Art, Andrew LaThird's. Well, we're wrapping up for the day, and we were hoping that we'd get a really nice sunset, but that's probably about the best we're gonna get. There's still a lot of clouds out here. So what we're gonna do instead is we're gonna get up bright and early tomorrow and hope that we get a beautiful sunrise. I mean, that's just the way photography works. You know, that being said though, you look at those clouds moving pretty quick, it actually make a really excellent time lapse. Too bad that Sony's actually canceled all the support for the time lapse apps for the A7 III. It means you're gonna have to go third party into Velometer if you wanna do that kind of stuff. And it's just kind of a strange, an unfortunate change of events that they're doing that. But, oh well, drink it in while you can on video. That's probably all we're gonna be able to do. No climbing, diving, jumping, or fishing. Oh, photography's okay though. So clearly someone must have built this bridge wrong, because I'm trying to get it symmetrical and it's not working, and it can't possibly be me. So someone built this bridge wrong. Jordan, there's fish jumping right there. Can we make a fishing show instead?
No. New show. DPReview show.
Fine. Whew, so we're just waiting for maybe a bit of pink light to come out here, and it's freezing cold as usual on our show. And I've got the camera on. I'm just watching it through the viewfinder because these Z-type batteries are great. If these were W series, we'd be 4 in right now. Well, we're out here, and I just don't think we're gonna get the light, DP reviewers, DP reviewites, DP reviewees. I don't know what to call you guys. You let me know what I should call you guys down in the comments below. But you know, this is how photography works. We get a nice frame. I'm happy with my composition. I like it. And you know, you're just waiting for the light. And sometimes it doesn't happen. Stayed out here overnight, just hoping for a good sunrise. But that's okay. We'll explore this train bridge and take some more shots around Canmore. And it's the way photography goes sometimes. Yeah, well, I mean, the lights, you know, I think that's as good as it's going to get. And I don't hate it. It's not Fairmont, Chateau, Lake Louise caliber. But, you know, 3-star mountain lodge or tiny little motel, I think they'd hang it up in there.
Chris, can you do that up? That buckle sound is driving me crazy.
What buckle sound? This buckle sound? That's driving you crazy?
Hey everyone, it's Jordan Drake to talk about the video capabilities of the Sony a7 III. It's filming me right now in 4K mode, and this is a great chance for us to test the autofocus on it. Chris is shooting on a gimbal. You can see Sony's phase detect does a really nice job. Might take a second, hesitate before it makes the move, but it's very smooth, it's very natural looking. I'd say it's second only to Canon's dual pixel autofocus in terms of video focus. Other great thing is we've got a stabilizer in this. Now we're not seeing the results from it right now because we're on a gimbal, but here you can see some handheld shots with it. Very nice natural look to it. I wouldn't say it's something that you could really walk with in the same way as the Panasonics and Olympuses, but it is an excellent system and a nice improvement over the Sony a7R II, S2, which could sometimes get a little bit jerky. Now, in terms of the video quality of this, all the Sony cameras seem to have kind of a sweet spot. With the R series cameras, they're best in Super 35 mode. With the a7 III, it's best in full frame recording. Reason for that, it's taking 24 megapixels, super sampling it into a beautiful 4K image, and that really gives us a lot of detail, and it also really helps minimize noise. This is their best image quality until you get into insanely high ISOs where you might still want the A7S II, but for most types of shooting, I'd much rather have an A7 III. So the image quality is really beautiful on this camera, but the other things I really like are the inclusion of the Z-type battery. I've gotten over 2 hours recording 4K video with this. As well, we've got dual card slots, so if it's an important video like this one here, I can record to a secondary card slot and have a backup on it. I think that's really important for any kind of professional camera. They've also added S-Log3 and HLG recording. Now, these are nice if you really want to expand the dynamic range of the camera, but I do find they don't work great with an 8-bit codec like this camera has. It's nice they included it for matching, but I would stick with S-Log2 when you're using this camera if at all possible. I was also really happy to see that we've got 120 frames per second, beautiful quality, and no crop when you're using that. It's a really nice addition. Now, there are some drawbacks to it. For starters, if you shoot 4K 30p, you will find there's a bit of a crop. We shoot our show at 24, so it's not an issue, but if you shoot 30p, you might find that that's a bit of a drawback. But the biggest one for me is we've got the low-res viewfinder, the 2.36 million dot, but the punch-in focus is also pretty rough on the Sonys. So I find whenever I'm using this camera, I've hooked an external monitor up to it. I'm using a small HD focus right now, but you will need that. It's just not a terribly sharp one like we'd see with some of the other cameras. The advantage to the Sony is we can do punch-in while recording. I think that's the trade-off. We can do it, but it's fairly soft. But all things considered, for the price point, the A7 III is an amazing value if you're into video shooting.
Oh, come on. Do you think DPReview will help us with a car if we put their website all over it?
Just decals everywhere?
Everywhere.
I don't see why not.
I see why not. Hey, there you go. There you go, the juxtaposition of a cement plant in the gorgeous mountain landscapes. That's Alberta. You know, we're heading back home to Calgary. You can see the light's pretty flat. We're just not finding it today. But if you can't find the right light out in nature, maybe you can find the right light artificially. So we've got a cool place we're going to check out. Join us there next. All right, so we're back in Calgary. We're gonna head to this really cool location. This is Pinbar in downtown Calgary. Awesome bar, full of vintage pinball machines and video games. We're gonna actually meet up with our friend Alex Beraru. Now, she's from Seven Circle Studios. She's a photographer, but today we're gonna make her a model. You know how much photographers love to be in front of their cameras, but she's gonna do a great job. Let's head inside. Now, all the latest Sony Alpha cameras have silent shooting modes, and of course the A9 is famous for having basically zero rolling shutter. Now, the A7R III with its 42.5 megapixel sensor unfortunately has a slower scan rate, and so you get quite a bit of rolling shutter. Where does the A7 III fit? Right in the middle. In fact, we just did some tests here. We're panning with cars, but I'm moving the camera at a fairly good clip. And what you can see is that the rolling shutter is there, but it's fairly well controlled. I'd say this camera would be perfectly ideal for shooting events, weddings, journalistic stuff where you need to stay silent. I don't think you're gonna get much rolling shutter that you're gonna notice. But if you're shooting sports in action, if you've got golf club swings and stuff like that, you still wanna go with the A9. Now, considering the relatively low cost of the A7 III, when I found out that it has the same 693-point AF system as the Sony A9, I was actually really blown away because that's the best performing autofocus that Sony has to date. Now, you're going to get better coverage than the A7R III. You're getting over 90% coverage here, so it'll outperform that camera. And in comparison with cameras like D5s and 1DXs, well, DPReview's Kerry Rose did some tests. He shot a soccer game. We don't have soccer here in Canada right now because all of our balls are frozen. But you can see here very, very good results. Now, shooting in Pinbar in the low light, I was also impressed, and this is a great way to test eye autofocus. I mean, again, looking at these shots, eye autofocus is just the greatest thing ever. It works effectively. It goes to face detect if it loses the eye. Overall, the A7 III is fully capable of shooting sports, action, portraiture, anything you want to throw at it. Okay, so far throughout this review, I think you get the idea that we like using the A7 III, but at the same time, all the technology we've talked about so far is nothing new. I mean, it's from the A9, it's from the A7R2, the A7R3, so on and so forth. So what is actually brand new about the A7 III? Well, it's what we're excited about the most, because this camera does feature a brand new 24 megapixels BSI sensor, okay, backside illuminated. Promises 15 stops dynamic range, 24 megapixels is just about right for most people where they need file size. Now, it is worth talking about some of the benefits here on the sensor as well, because up to this point, the Nikon D750's 24 megapixel sensor was basically the gold standard. It was up to this point the best. And I have to say that the A7 III does surpass that. Low light performance, dynamic range, sharpness as well. Now, as we get more in-depth on this sensor, this is one of the great parts about shooting for DPReview. You have access by the link below to amazing articles and a lot of in-depth research on this sensor. And honestly, this brand new sensor is worth researching, so check that out, please. But here's some things I just want to touch on. Now, first off, when people found out that the A7 III sensor had an anti-aliasing filter, which often causes a loss of resolution, people were very disappointed. But the fact is, the A9 is quite a bit softer than this. This really maintains the resolution to a high standard, to the point where it is possible to still get a little bit of moire. That being said, the moire will almost never happen. It's very minor. Again, check the samples on DPReview to see what we're talking about, and it can easily be removed in post-processing. Now, on top of that, Sony's also tweaked the color science here, and that's a really nice thing as well, because again, one of the other things that people complained about with Sony, they didn't like the color science. But the red tones have been vastly improved, and this really adds in the rendition of skin tones. Overall, we're finding that this 24 megapixel sensor is pretty much the best on the market. All right, so the evening is concluding, and so is our review of the A7 III. And I guess what I want you guys to take home from this, who is this camera for? A lot of people. I mean, this camera is going to make big waves. You got to remember the big two companies, you know, the D750, the 6D Mark II, these are great cameras in their own way, but one's dated, the other one's a little bit underwhelming, and a camera like this really in pretty much every way, shape, and form blows them away. On top of that, you know, the A7 III is now at a price point where it competes with a lot of APS-C cameras and Micro Four Thirds cameras like the Panasonic G9, the Fuji X-H1, and again, you got to ask yourself, for the same price, I could get a full frame camera with all of the thin depth of field and aesthetic that goes with that, plus amazing dynamic range and low light performance out of the sensor for a very similar price point. That's going to be very, very appealing. Now, I do want to mention, when it comes to full frames, yes, the lenses will be a little bit more expensive. Sony have some affordable options, especially the 28-70 kit lens that you can get with this camera. At the same time, though, if you want 2.8 glass, Sony stuff is going to be expensive. There's just no two ways about it. But there are third-party manufacturers like Tamron and Sigma, and they're probably going to come out with lenses that will help mitigate that cost. So if you're an existing Nikon or Canon user, it makes a lot of sense to move here. The adapters on the market nowadays work excellent with the phase, contrast, hybrid, detect autofocus that you have in a camera like this. On top of that, if you're an APS-C user, you're gonna need new lenses anyways, so moving up to this Sony might make fiscal sense. And on top of that, if you're an already existing Sony A7R III or A9 user, this would make an excellent backup camera. Overall, we really enjoy the A7 III. We think it's gonna make a big splash in the market. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You know, check out DPReview.com, get these articles on this camera and many more out there. It's definitely worthwhile. And on top of that, although Jordan and I have been doing this for a long time, DPReview is a new venture for us. So please, if you enjoyed this content, subscribe to the channel. Let us build this channel to something that could be really amazing. Comment below. Let us know what you want to see us change or do differently. We'd be happy to take that into consideration. But until then, we're going to see you guys really soon. Thanks so much for joining us.